This is CBS. From CBS News in Washington, this is the CBS News Nightwatch. This morning, controversy in the classroom. Should public school kids be educated about AIDS, or could the knowledge have a potentially harmful effect?
The teacher says, you have the facts, you know your body, you know your feelings, you make your own decisions.
You're saying that there's nothing wrong with two children having a homosexual relationship if they will not give each other AIDS.
Our series, The Broadcasters, concludes with a sometimes harsh appraisal of local news, both over the air and at the newsstand.
Eyewitness News reporter, you have an industry that's full on both sides, print and broadcast. It is full of a lot of people who can't write their names, much less a very good story.
It's not always easy to understand the psyche of a cult follower, but one woman will try to explain, both to our viewers and to her own sister.
They call it a cult. They think it's dangerous. They think that I'm brainwashed. They think I don't know what I'm doing. That's paranoia as far as I'm concerned.
All that plus headlines, sports, night train, and renowned fashion photographer Richard Avedon points his camera in a new direction. Now here is CBS News correspondent Charlie Rose.
Good morning. We've covered some dramatic stories this week. There was the power struggle in the White House. There was the controversy over the spread of AIDS. This morning, we take time to look at a personal but powerful story. It's a tale of two sisters. Like any family, they laughed together and they played together. But there's tragedy in this story. The Ryan family has been both devastated and split apart by religious cults. The father, Congressman Leo Ryan, went to Guyana to investigate Jim Jones and the followers. He was shot to death. Not long afterwards, one of his daughters, Shannon, began looking for a way to explain the murder. She went to India. It was there that she became a follower of Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. Another of Ryan's daughters, Patricia, went in the opposite direction. She saw the danger in cults. She spoke out about her concerns about the Bhagwan and his followers. These are two sisters who took different paths after their father's death. This morning, we become witness to their attempt to mend fences. They'll be here together for the first time on television to explore their differences. That's coming up just a little later here on Night Watch. A dramatic, personal story, two sisters. Stay with us.
Coming up, should classroom education include warnings about the deadly disease, AIDS? A look at both sides of the issue, just ahead.
I just bought this quality flatbed on sale. I made a smart buy.
I just bought this Craftmatic 2 adjustable bed, and I paid over $100 less for my bed than that guy.
I have problems when I read. I have to stack up pillows.
I simply press this button, and instantly my bed positions itself for perfect reading.
I have problems when I snack. I spill stuff. Why did I buy a flat bed?
My Craftmatic 2 positions itself for perfect eating.
I paid top price, and I still don't get a good night's sleep.
I'm no dummy. I bought a Craftmatic 2 adjustable bed.
Be smart. Don't buy any bed until you get this free information by mail about the Craftmatic 2 adjustable bed that costs less than many flat beds. Call toll-free now for free information.
Call toll-free 1-800-235-3500, 1-800-235-3500. Call 1-800-235-3500 toll-free, 1-800-235-3500.
When do you say L.A.?
It's time to start your chestnuts roasting. Deck those halls and otherwise prepare to party. 'Tis the season to stock up on beer. Some of that beer is going to be L.A. from Anheuser-Busch. L.A. tastes great, and it's got half the alcohol. During a long party, that's a choice my friends like to have, and they do like to have fun.
Is that mistletoe?
I hope so.
L.A., sometimes it's the perfect thing to say.
It's a Radio Shack Merry Christmas.
I'm giving everyone a mini phone from Radio Shack. That way they'll call often. It's trim, compact, and has an automatic redial. And the 16-foot cord means they can use it anywhere around the house. Best of all, it's on sale for only $12.95. I even bought myself one. Hello? Hello? Hello?
The mini phone, on sale for $12.95, only at Radio Shack.
In the news, at least 28 people have died as a result of snow and bitter cold, which has pushed out of the Rockies since Sunday. Temperatures dropped into the teens and below from the Midwest to New England Thursday. And it is so cold, even in Greensboro, North Carolina, that shelters for the homeless are already overcrowded. In Michigan, a tractor-trailer loaded with steel rammed a school bus on a snow-covered highway Thursday, pushing the bus into a bridge abutment. 4 children died. At least 21 other people were injured. The Center for Disease Control will publish a new AIDS precaution today. It warns that pregnant women infected with the disease may run a risk as high as 65% of passing it on to their unborn child. The CDC is recommending testing for high-risk women who are or may become pregnant.
School kids are experimenting with sex and drugs at earlier and earlier ages. That could be fostering the spread of AIDS and other diseases to younger and younger people. The head of New York City's school system thinks that calls for action. Chancellor Nathan Quiones wants sex education and information about AIDS taught at an early age. He joins us now from New York City. Chancellor Quiones, what is it you want to do?
Well, we have to do a number of things, all related to education. Currently, let me just say yesterday being the board meeting of the Board of Education, they approved a resolution whereby we will be contracting with a filming company to produce a film that we hope will be shown on public television, whereby youngsters and their families will be able to watch together, and where we will be able to have at least a piece of information that will be seen in common by a host of adults with their children, and thereby extending that element of education, but within the family household. Currently, we're also preparing and have prepared some lesson plans on the topic of AIDS. Certainly, we know that this is an issue that brings in information that is both sensitive as well as controversial.
A couple of questions. First, what's the message you want to send through the film, through the education in the schools?
Well, I think one is, what is the disease about? Number 2 is how it is contracted. And 3, how can it be prevented? And in ways that are not overly technical, but that can be readily understood by adults as well as by adolescents.
Yeah. Does that mean, by definition, you have to, as any serious discussion of AIDS has to get into, is all of the sexual means in which it is transferred?
That's right. I think part of the problem is that the more that we try to talk around the primary means by which this is transmitted leads us into further problems, because then it implies that it is more readily contagious than it actually is. And I think that some of the earlier information, we're still I think extremely sensitive about using words such as anal intercourse and semen in public. And I think that the word body fluids, for example, to be substituted for semen is one that now gives the impression, or gave the impression, that it could be transmitted by sneezing and by saliva in rather facile fashion, whereas that was really not the case.
What do you say to those parents who are worried that this kind of film somehow, in some way, in the same way that they object to sex education films, will promote a sexual precociousness that's not healthy?
2 things. One, that nothing can really substitute the strength and the information that individuals receive from within the household. And the values, I should say, that are really implement or part of a family living. The next is that by and large, throughout this city and throughout the United States, that there is support for sex education in this country. There is, however, a small but very powerful voice arguing against it. The argument, as you point out, is one that if we present this within the classrooms, that we really have and are promoting promiscuity. Let me just cite, in one area of the city, 70% of all births are out of wedlock. I would have to then redefine promiscuity, because it is certainly taking place. And one of the few countries, certainly of the Western world, where there is no sex education in our classrooms, and yet where the out-of-wedlock births and the abortion rate far exceeds other countries where sex education doesn't.
And you think there's a direct causal connection? Dr. Quiones, you think there's a direct connection between the absence of sex education and the proliferation of teenage births, childbearing?
Well, certainly no one can say that there's a direct causal relationship, but we can cite that we have very little, if any, sex education in our classes and within this country. Just among the white population in this country, we have twice the number of out-of-wedlock births than we have in England, for example.
Chancellor Quiones, thank you very much for joining us. When we come back, we'll talk with two community leaders concerned about the issue. Stay with us.
Still ahead on Night Watch, a close-up on cults with two sisters, one who is in, one who is out.
Nearly 100 years ago, school children in France and America gave their pennies to help raise the Statue of Liberty. For almost a century, she has stood as a symbol of freedom and hope for people all over the world. Now, age and harsh weather have weakened her. Only you can keep her torch burning bright. Send your contribution to The Lady, Box 1986, New York, or call 1-800-THE-LADY. Keep the torch lit.
Hello, I'm Dr. Denton Cooley. Almost every day of the week, every week of the year, I perform open heart surgery. Operations and many other life-saving procedures are possible today because of recent scientific advances. But even with the most modern medical technology, many lives could not be saved if it were not for voluntary blood donors. From the newborn infant to the geriatric patient, millions depend on receiving the gift that comes through caring. That gift is blood. And there is a constant need for it every day in every community. There's no substitute for human blood, so please show you care. Contact your local hospital or community blood bank to make a life-saving donation. The American Association of Blood Banks asks you to share your good health and give blood today. Thank you.
Kidney disease is one of our greatest health problems. To learn more about kidney disease, its treatment, and how you can help, contact your American Kidney Fund. It's toll-free.
Joining us now as we talk about whether school children should be taught about AIDS, Georgette Wallace, president of the Parents Club of Public School 62 in Richmond Hill, New York, and Rabbi Yehuda Levin of the Family Defense Coalition. What do you think?
Well, I think that we're really shortchanging our children, Charlie. It's funny. If a child will ask his teacher whether he should have drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, the child will be told no. When it comes to sex, the teachers don't want to teach values. I'm all for sex education, for education about AIDS, with values. Start out with a premise of saying, this is wrong, then go on from there.
Ms. Wallace?
I disagree. I don't think the teachers should be giving their opinions. I think they should be giving the accurate facts and letting the children get all the information and then make their own decisions.
Well, let's talk about the New York City school situation in particular. In our city, 40% of the children are dropping out. In the city of New York, Nathan Quinones was forced to announce just recently that out of 600 of the worst schools in the state, 470 of them were in New York City. These teachers aren't even successful in teaching the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. And they are going to become the people to convey to our children, maybe even in grade school, maybe even in the 5th or 6th grade, the most intricate aspects of sexual relations. But careful, don't tell them values. Tell them, listen, kids, if you use a condom, you won't get AIDS.
What values are you insisting be taught?
First of all, I'm not insisting on anything. I'm just advocating.
Okay, well, advocating.
That we can get back to basic family values, which means cigarettes is not good for a kid under 18. Certainly, sexual relationships aren't good. Even safe sex. In other words, I don't think that children should be taught...
But nobody is teaching sexual relations are good for you. That's not even part of... And the value is in...
Charlie, there's an inference when one doesn't start out by saying, as they do in Lyndhurst, Long Island, our next-door neighbors. In Lyndhurst, they start out by telling the kids, abstinence is the best thing for you psychologically and health-wise. And I think we should start out with that premise.
Okay, with that sort of overview, which seems to tie information about AIDS into the whole question of sexual education, I'd like to separate it for a second.
Sure.
Speak to how you feel about information about a much misunderstood but deadly subject, AIDS.
All right, I think there is a misinformation. The
Should
trial...
it be taught? Should information be taught to school
definitely.
children?
The children need the facts, and they don't need them whitewashed. I agree with Chancellor Quinones that they should not be talking about body fluids because the children don't understand what they're talking about. Tell them semen. Tell the children that you cannot get pregnant through kissing. You cannot get pregnant through other means.
What age? 5th grade, 7th grade, 9th grade?
I believe in the lower grades. I think they should start with good touches and bad touches.
Know the truth and it'll make you free.
Child abuse.
It will make you free if it's the truth. But we have to take into consideration the fact that, as I say, in the New York City sex education guidelines, they teach children about masturbation. For instance, there's nothing wrong health-wise with masturbation or homosexuality. Homosexuality is not a disease. They give them that fact in the 5th or 6th grade. Now, what I'm saying is, first of all, aren't we automatically saying that we are sacrificing the children who come from good family backgrounds and good homes that don't necessarily need this type of information and especially don't need it in a neutral background, like there's no absolute right or wrong?
But those children will make their decisions based on their upbringing.
But we won't allow
You have to give them all the information and let them choose what they'd like.
But it's ridiculous to let children choose about sexual relationships and not let them choose about drinking a cup of whiskey.
Do you know how insecure many children are when they enter adolescence, when they don't know the facts? When they're frightened by sex?
We're not saying don't give them the facts. What we're saying is start out by teaching in a positive way what is right and what is wrong. Give a little bit of tough love.
Do you think the teachers would be crude? The teachers won't be crude about this.
It's not a question.
I think they will have to choose sensitive people. It can't be every teacher.
Okay, let me cut through. What is it that you're saying, listen, give the facts. It's important. It's a critical issue. You're saying teach it with values. Argument also is made, values ought to be taught at home. Let's assume that's true. What worries you? Bottom line, cutting everything away from the rhetoric around the issue of AIDS. What worries you about teaching a 9th grader about AIDS, about how you contact AIDS, whether it is from needles or whether it is from some kind of homosexual contact or whether it is from all the other risk to the transmission of AIDS?
What worries me is this tremendous trepidation, this almost fear that we see expressed by the parent of several children right here in this studio, that you're not allowed to tell a child starting out that the first thing is it's better not to be involved in these activities at all. For instance, by telling a child in school, if you have a condom and you're involved in anal intercourse, you cannot or will not receive AIDS. Let's say that's a statement that would be part of AIDS education. But what does that convey implicitly to the child?
A fact.
A fact that also is saying, so therefore...
But that child can also say, well, I don't plan to do that.
That child could, but should that child be in a position that he or she is the sole arbiter and decisor about such a sensitive thing? Aren't we in effect saying
you
that...
have all the rights and responsibilities over your body. So you should have the information about your body.
I don't think that's true, because if you take it legally now, right now in society, legally, thank God, child sexual relations are officially against the law, because society has for thousands of years understood that this is not healthy.
Having the facts will not encourage children to be promiscuous or to have sex.
Well, when a teacher has the blasé attitude that you're showing, well, kids, you have all the facts and you make the decisions. In effect, you're saying that there's nothing wrong with two children having a homosexual relationship if they will not give each other AIDS. That's what you're conveying here.
No, that's not at all.
Wrong? Can you answer the question?
I was
teacher, tell me, is it wrong or right, teacher, for me to have a homosexual relationship with a condom?
That teacher should not answer.
But that is in itself
the teacher should give the facts.
Teacher shouldn't answer because what?
The teacher should not force her opinions on the children.
Student comes to a teacher and says, is homosexual sexual preference okay? And the teacher should say, that's none of my business.
The teacher says, you have the facts, you know your body, you know your feelings, you make your own decisions.
You have the facts. What facts do you ultimately have? That whatever you want to do, as long as you don't get sick or pregnant, that's okay? Yeah. I don't think that's contributing to to solving the problem that we have with promiscuity, with this attitude that do it as many times as you want.
Are you worried in the end that kids are going to become homosexual? Is that what really concerns you?
Do you think they will experiment?
In reaction to the fear of AIDS and teaching some information about AIDS as how it's transferred, people will take that kind of medical and health information and say, it's okay for me to engage in any kind of sexual conduct, and that they will have an incentive to engage in it because they've been taught health information?
I think that there's
sexual experimentation?
I think that there's a distinct possibility of sexual experimentation when one takes into consideration the rising amount of sexual experiences that are now going through the schools. That's a microcosm of what's happening in the adult world, where there is an increase in bisexuality.
Okay, last word to you, Ms. Wallace.
I don't think a person has a choice about their sexuality. I think you are what you are. A homosexual knows at a younger age that that person is a homosexual, and a heterosexual knows.
We should do this at another time because it brings up all kinds of discussions and subjects that we have treated and will clearly treat in the future. Thank you very much, Rabbi Levin. Thank you very much, Ms. Wallace. Night Watch continues. Stay with us.
When do you say L.A.?
It's time to start your chestnuts roasting. Deck those halls, and otherwise prepare to party. 'Tis the season to stock up on beer. Some of that beer is going to be L.A. from Anheuser-Busch. L.A. tastes great, and it's got half the alcohol. During a long party, that's a choice my friends like to have, and they do like to have fun.
Is that mistletoe?
I hope so.
L.A., sometimes it's the perfect thing to say.
Come on along, I'll take you to the lullaby of Broadway. The hickory and ballyhoo.
The lullaby of Broadway.
And in the center of it all
is the Milford Plaza.
Stay at the Milford Plaza Hotel with cocktail dinner and breakfast for $43 per person. Discover why we are the lullaby of Broadway.
The Milford Plaza is the lullaby of all Broadway.
Morning is your time. The earth wakes up with you. You always feel that spark of life in everything you do.
Grape nuts. For you, it's as natural as the morning. No sugar added, no preservatives, just an honest nutty crunch. Post Grape Nuts cereal. You know when you've got it good.
Yes, you know when you've got it good.
Announcing new instant Sanka brand decaffeinated coffee with new fresh brewed taste. New Sanka starts with fine coffee beans, gently roasted, and perked with our special fresh brewing process. You'll love the irresistible aroma and new fresh brewed taste. It's so smooth, so satisfying. New instant Sanka. Now the first name in decaffeinated coffee has a new fresh brewed taste.
Later this morning on Night Watch, the return of Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh to India spurs a reunion between two sisters who clashed on religious cults. We'll meet the daughters of slain Congressman Leo Ryan. Is local television news getting any better? The final installment of our series, The Broadcasters, tries to answer that question. And a look at a harsher side of life from a photographer who usually shoots high fashion, Richard Avedon.
Our night train goes to Hollywood this morning and on to the lot of 20th Century Fox in the year 1960. Charles Collingwood paid a call on producer-director George Stevens for the broadcast person-to-person. George Stevens was working on the greatest story ever told in that year.
On the grounds of the 20th Century Fox studios are a group of buildings called bungalows. These are the inner sanctums of the top executives. This is George Stevens' bungalow. Hello, George.
Well, Charles Collingwood, come on in.
Say, I admire that car of yours.
I bet you thought I couldn't get out of it.
Well, still the sylph-like figure.
Well, it is good to see you, Charles. It's been a little while.
It's been too long.
Yes, sir.
George, you've been in this business a long time, and you have an unusual, eminent position in the business of picture making. Can you possibly explain briefly your philosophy of pictures?
Well, briefly, it is, I believe, to give an audience a rewarding and satisfying experience from a film.
That's a pretty good definition. What would you say has been the motion picture's greatest contribution to this country? Or let me put it the other way around. What has been this country's greatest contribution to motion pictures?
Well, it seems that this country has had everything that the motion picture needed. It's had the talents, the writing, the acting, and these gorgeous landscapes, cities, great sunlight.
George, I know that you're working now on the greatest story ever told. How's that picture coming along?
Well, we have very interesting preparation. Come with me, Charles. Now, this is what interests us. Here is our excitement. Here is our work. Here's where we're hatching the design and the information that goes into a picture. And it's continually interesting and exciting to us. Charles, you know my son.
Sure. Hello, Charles.
How are you? George and I work very closely together as associate director and producer. George supplies what I like to think of as something of the new wave, and I hold to maybe some of the older, more traditional things. But we work it out pretty well together, don't we?
Sounds like a good partnership.
We have, over the period of a year and a half, brought some things together here that we refer to as our crash course in the New Testament.
And after all the research is done, then you get down to the actual business of writing the script from which the film will be made.
The work on that is in the enormously capable hands of Carl Sandburg.
By the way, when are you going to get down to the actual filming?
Well, we're bringing together a cast of stars to do the playing of this, and we want to have them all together right after the first of the year, Charles, in January, so that we can go out into the mountainous area and get our landscapes while the time is right and the light is right to do that kind of work.
Is the western part of the United States going to look like the Holy Land 2,000 years ago?
Well, it certainly has the vigor and the dynamics that the Holy Land presented to the people of its time. The Holy Land having been eroded considerably by all sorts of forces, man, goat, and rain in these last 2,000 years. But it was an enormously exciting landscape in its time, and I suppose it still is. We take something perhaps from the Renaissance painters' theory when they took landscapes that were familiar to them to romance the great story with as backgrounds.
And then, after you shoot it, then you face what I know you, preeminently among directors and producers, thinks the most critical part of all, the editing and cutting of the film.
It's quite critical, because one has an opportunity to correct some mistakes, perhaps, at that time.
A check of this date in history reveals that a New York psychologist by the name of Dr. Joyce Brothers won the top prize on the TV quiz show, the $64,000 question in 1955, by correctly answering questions about boxing. In the news, federal agents are reportedly broadening the investigation that began with accused spy Jonathan Pollard, and they're now looking for other covert Israeli operations in the U.S. One official is quoted as saying the Navy analyst's selling of secrets to Israel was only the tip of the espionage iceberg. The NATO allies are proposing a limited U.S.-Soviet troop withdrawal from Central Europe. For the first time Thursday, NATO stopped insisting on more information before discussing troop reductions. The immediate Soviet response was not enthusiastic. In Oregon, state prosecutors have charged 26 corporations associated with the guru Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh with racketeering. The charges include attempted murder, assault, burglary, and arson. The Bhagwan was allowed to leave the country last month after pleading guilty to violating immigration laws.
Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh is back in India now. His legal troubles in the United States are behind him. Slowly, his former domain in Oregon is returning to the way it was. His commune is closing and the Bhagwan's followers are leaving. One of those followers drew some special attention earlier this year. Her name is Ma Amrita Pritam. Her membership in the Bhagwan's commune raised some eyebrows. Jane Wallace explains why in this report prepared before the guru's latest rounds of troubles. It was originally shown on the CBS News broadcast, West 57th.
Every day at Rancho Rajneesh, the devoted gather just to glimpse their master. He's Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, a self-proclaimed mystic. He made his way to Oregon 4 years ago when he was facing tax evasion in India. His disciples have changed their names, given Bhagwan 90 Rolls Royces, and their lives. One of them is 32-year-old Shannon Ryan. Her father was Leo Ryan, the congressman killed while investigating Jonestown.
I'm not stupid enough to fall into the same kind of trap that people who went to Jonestown fell into. If I thought this was anything like that, I wouldn't be here. This is what people don't understand, is that they think because I'm here, I must be brainwashed. I must not be knowing what I'm doing. I must have made some terrible mistake. I must be stupid. I don't know what they think. It's a miracle that I'm even here. After being through all what I heard about Jonestown, I was more careful than anybody else would have been, because I didn't want that to happen to me.
It was 6 years ago that Shannon's father walked to his death across this Guyana airstrip. Congressman Ryan had gone to find out what was happening to Jim Jones' followers. He ended up their victim. Another of Ryan's daughters, Pat, lives in her late father's house on Capitol Hill.
I talked to my grandmother just last week, and she told me that my father told her the night before he left that he was worried about Shannon because she's starting to get involved in spiritual things, that she was really looking for something and he didn't know where she was going to end up.
The interesting thing that most people don't see is how this relates to what my father did when he went to Jonestown. What he found there was, as far as I'm concerned, a Christianity cult. Those people were into death. They were into following somebody else, not thinking for themselves, being paranoid, being frightened. And they all committed suicide together because somebody told them to or somebody forced them to. There's nothing like that going on here whatsoever.
Joining us now, Ma Amrita Pritam, formerly Shannon Jo Ryan, and her sister Patricia Ryan, Pat Ryan, a lobbyist here in Washington and an activist on the Cult Awareness Council. This is the first time the two of you have been together since a year ago. Mm-hmm. And certainly the first time together on television. Tell me about your feelings as you watch that, as you sit across here.
I think we're both a little bit nervous with each other. I don't know, she probably doesn't know what I think of her, and I don't know what she thinks of me, so it's, you know, not having seen each other for so long and having gone off in such different directions, it's a little bit tough.
What do you think of her?
I like her. She's my sister.
Yeah. Why are you in different places? If you look back and said, we find ourselves in very different places today, what would be the answer?
I think we were always in very different places. We grew up in the same family, but we're very different people. She's always been a more social person, the more outgoing, friendly type of person, and I've been more of a inside person, more introspective.
You'd share that insight?
I think that's true.
When you look at her, do you understand her today?
No, not that I don't. I don't think I could ever understand her completely any more than I understand any of the rest of my brothers and sisters.
But it's no different than the other brothers or sisters.
Well, it's a little bit different because the rest of us see each other and talk to each other more. And obviously, Pritam is doing things that are sort of foreign to us, and all we do is hear about it on the news, and we hear some kind of alarming things. So all we try to do is, everybody in the family tries to understand and think, well, she is a smart person and she must know what she's doing, and if that's making her happy, that's fine. It gets more and more difficult when you hear about some of the strange things that are happening, and we do worry. We can't help but worry.
What questions come to mind for you when you think about all that she has been through and the experiences she's had, and seeing her here on this piece by Jane Wallace?
Well, when I watched that, I was even more nervous because just in the last year or so, there have been a lot of things going on there. My sister and brother and I were up for Pritam's wedding about 3 years ago. We were at Rancho Rajneesh, so we saw it and we met some of the people, and we felt a little bit relieved then after having seen it, and it seemed like a good place for her, and she seemed happy. But when you start seeing and reading about the guns that they were accumulating, and I always was very suspicious of Sheila, the one who, I don't know what you call it, defected or whatever you want to call it, but the one who left. She was the prime spokesperson for Rajneesh, and she was always very aggressive and offensive, I thought. And whenever I saw her, I worried, and she seemed to be the one that was bringing the paranoia into the group.
When we come back, let's get an update. Where is Sheila, and when your own feelings about the Bhagwan going back to India and what that means for your future life, as well as look back to earlier times. We'll do that. Stay with us. Night Watch continues.
Thought I'd get this far, but look how far I've come. I know I still have things to learn and fears to overcome, but I'm standing on my own 2 feet and working for my pay. No one thought I'd get this far, but I'm going all the way. There were those who sold me short and those who thought me slow, but I'm stronger every day, and every day I grow. And now I'm living on my own, and all I want to say is no one thought I'd get this far, but I'm going all the way.
With it. Give up the smokes and get this cigarette mash poster. It's free. Just write to Cigarette Mash, Public Health Service, Rockville, Maryland, 20857. Cigarette Mash, Cigarette Mash. We don't
Pritam Ryan here. Do I say Pritam Ryan or just...
Well, I don't use that name anymore. It's
the Ryan name.
Rita Pritam, and I'm called Pritam.
Okay, and Pat Ryan, talking about a really extraordinary family that we all remember your dad, the congressman who was killed, and your experiences, and we have seen the focus on the family. Could I bring the Bhagwan up to date? He is in India. Were you tempted to go with him to India, even though he said he didn't want his followers to go with him?
Before he said that he didn't want anyone to go with him, I would have gone with him if I could. It would have been difficult for me financially and for other reasons, but
what other
I would
reasons?
want to be with him. It's a culture shock to go there. It's not my favorite country.
You've been there before?
Yeah. And also, I would probably want to stay with him longer than a visa would allow me to stay with him.
Millions of Americans watching you at this moment, having watched the Bhagwan on national television and the sort of daily sense of what was happening there on the 3 networks and cable news, wonder what it is that draws you to him.
Love. He's the most extraordinary person that I've ever seen in my whole life, and I can't imagine anyone else like him. To try to describe him to you would be impossible because it can only be experienced. And when you look at somebody, you don't see the same thing that I see in this man.
And you saw in him what?
I think the best description I've heard of him is that he's extraordinarily ordinary. He's just totally himself. He's just totally relaxed and at home in himself. And when I'm around him, I start to pick up on that too, and I start to feel the same way about myself.
Extraordinarily ordinary. What then, obviously in millions of viewers, this leaps to mind. What's ordinary about 100 Rolls Royces? What's ordinary about all that money? And what's ordinary about that commune? And what's ordinary about all those practices that we heard about?
That's a lot of questions. One thing that a lot of people bring up is the Rolls Royces. And it's not an ordinary thing to give somebody 90 Rolls Royces. People did it because their love for him is so great. They wanted to give him anything that they could give him, and that's something that he enjoyed using. And he wasn't attached to it. He didn't really care. He went off to India without a single Rolls Royce, and he's fine without it. It's what he does with what he has. He actually owns nothing. But
didn't take any money with him to India?
No.
Yeah, what happened
So
to all the money?
a few people went with him. They may have taken some money with him to set up a house and take care of him, but he didn't take millions of dollars with him.
What about Sheila, the woman that Pat mentioned that defected from the commune? You didn't approve of her. Certainly the Bhagwan didn't.
When she was there, I admired her, and I had a lot of respect for her, and in a way, I loved her. I didn't know the crimes that she was committing. I wasn't aware of those until after she left. And a lot of what she did was very good, and also her whole being there was such a power trip that it was oppressive, which I didn't realize until she left.
Power trip meaning?
She had so much control over everybody's lives. She made all the decisions for everyone. And when she left, we noticed that everybody felt so much freer, that it was really beautiful. And we appreciated that. You know, she built something. She put a lot of hard work into it. We all put a lot of hard work into it. And we created something really beautiful. And very few people knew the other stuff that was going on, which is the reason that she left.
What about the other question about the Rolls Royces and also the sexual, what was the sexual premise of the commune?
The sexual premise of the commune is just to be natural and ordinary, not to feel guilty if you enjoy sex.
With anybody there?
Whatever you prefer to do is up to you. It's not that you have to do this. It's not that you have to indulge in a lot of sex or anything like that. If you feel to do it, it's fine to do it, and there's no reason to feel guilty. Most people's sex lives are as ordinary as yours. I don't know how ordinary that is.
Very probably, but listening to this, what do you think? What does cult awareness and all that you've thought about say to you?
About cults in general?
About how she feels about the Bhagwan and about the commune. Are you mystified?
Yeah.
Because you know someone here. This is not like someone that you see on television. This is someone you grew up with. This is someone that was a part of your household.
It's really hard. It's easier for me to look at other groups and to listen to what has happened to other people and to see what happened in Jonestown and to really learn how these groups work objectively than it is for me to look at hers and say that that's the same as the rest of them. It's hard for me to do it because she's my sister, and if she tells me she's okay, I want to believe that. But on the other hand, when I see some of the things that Sheila did, the paranoia and the attempted murders and some of the things that Pritam has said, it's hard for me to not think that she is being controlled to a certain extent. But it's also hard for me to say that that's wrong for her.
Are you being controlled?
No.
All of this is your own choice. You could walk away.
I could walk away anytime I want to.
But you were being controlled when Sheila was there. And you didn't even know it, and that's the whole point that I
don't feel that the control that you're talking about was really happening, and I don't feel that my life was controlled any more than your life is controlled by other influences. She was certainly a big influence in my life. She made a lot of decisions, just like in a family.
What kinds of decisions?
The father makes a lot of decisions. In that family, Sheila made a lot of decisions. And when you go away from your family, when you grow up, you feel a bit freer because then you can really be on your own. You can really do whatever you want to do. It's the same feeling as it was when Sheila left, and that's the kind of control she had over us. But each one of us is an individual, and each one of us is responsible for what we do with our lives. And I don't feel that I belong to a cult. I believe.
But see, that's another thing. I've read a lot and studied a lot about cults, and I've talked to a lot of people who have been in them and have been hurt by them. And that's one of the first things that people say who are involved in cults is that theirs is not a cult. And like, again, I'm not criticizing her or the Rajneesh commune, but there are things that make me question and worry because it is very similar to a lot of the other groups that I feel are dangerous and that I've heard from people who were involved are dangerous.
There's a similarity here in terms of Jonestown and the Rajneesh, beyond the violence, but in terms of mind control, in terms of hierarchical commitment, in terms of...
I don't think that Rajneesh is as sick as Jonestown. Jim Jones was a sick man, and...
I'm not even asking that comparison,
right.
I understand that. But in terms of how people felt about Jim Jones versus in terms of how people felt about...
In terms of the way that the group has evolved and the adoration of a single leader like that, there are a lot of similarities. I think that she said herself that they would do almost anything for him, and I don't mean by that you're going to all commit suicide. I would never think that would happen, but when you have a leader like that they love so much, they would do anything for him.
Hold that point. I want to be right back. Stay with us. We'll continue.
Local news, still happy talk and violence, or is it mending its ways? We'll hear sharply differing views as we continue our series, The Broadcasters.
Announcing a fabulous sale on the computer America has been waiting for. Urban General is offering the Commodore Plus 4 personal computer at a fraction of its retail price. It's the first computer with 4 built-in software packages, the big 4 every computer owner needs for business and home. Built-in graphics and sound commands, 128 colors, 64K memory, basic language with over 75 commands. Features you'd expect in an expensive high-power model. Use your word processing to write letters, school reports, rewrite and edit. Change whole paragraphs without retyping. Create graphics, circles, boxes, charts, graphs, full color designs. The electronic spreadsheet balances checkbooks, business statements. Change one figure on your income tax, and your computer automatically recalculates the entire sheet. Use file management software for mailing lists, inventories, recipes, all your business and personal records. Your software is integrated so you can combine a chart with a letter, include a graph with a term paper. And because it's a user-friendly Commodore, it's so easy to use. It's compatible with hundreds of software packages for business, education, or family fun. Retail stores like Sears originally offered the Plus 4 for $299.95. Now, on this special TV offer, you can order the Commodore Plus 4 for only $99.95 $1,995 complete. That's a fraction of what you'd expect to pay for the built-in software alone. Plus, you'll receive $150 in discount coupons to use when you're ready to expand your system. So don't delay. Due to limited quantities, this $99.95 offer is only good while supplies last. Only one order per customer will be accepted. Use your credit card and order the incredible Commodore Plus 4, the $99.95 computer package America has been waiting for.
Use your credit card for rush delivery by calling 1-800-548-7000. That's 1-800-548-7000. Or send check or money order for $99.95 plus $10 shipping and handling to Commodore Plus 4. P.O. Box 3500, Department D, West Caldwell, New Jersey, 07006.
Does the feeling that you feel for the Bhagwan suggest a need for authority, a need for a figure? Is it related to the tragic death of your father?
I'm glad you asked that question, because the whole attractiveness of this whole sannyasin movement, which is what I'm involved in, is not to look to an authority figure to solve all of your problems. Bhagwan's main teaching to us is be your own authority. Know yourself well enough not to believe in what anybody else tells you.
And but then why did you let Sheila tell you what to do?
Sheila didn't control my whole life. Sheila told me what to do in the same way as your boss tells you what to do. It's not any deeper than that. And this whole paranoia thing that people keep bringing up over and over again, as far as I'm concerned, other people are paranoid about what I'm involved in. I'm not paranoid about...
Meaning what? That the other people are paranoid about what you're involved in?
They call it a cult. They think it's dangerous. They think that I'm brainwashed. They think I don't know what I'm doing. That's paranoia as far as I'm concerned. What would be helpful is if people who, before they make those judgments, would experience it for themselves and see what they're talking about. I don't feel like Pat really knows what she's doing.
I don't claim to know. All I do is question. And
no, but you speak out against so-called cults.
But I don't speak out necessarily against yours. I speak out. The reason I do it is because people who have been hurt by them have asked me to. And I've taken an interest over the years because I'm a natural person to give them a voice.
And has a reason to do it, because the untimely and the tragic death of your father was related to cults. I mean, therefore, was it not? You can accept that, and you can accept, therefore, someone saying, you know, I want to speak out against that, because that kind of activity, you may be an exception, your group may be an exception, but that kind of activity, which my father felt strongly about, went on behalf of his constituents, led to his death, because people acted out of, you know.
I think that using Jonestown and bringing it up over and over again in relation to what I'm doing is a form of paranoia. It's saying, because that happened, this can happen to you. What people look at is the surface, and they see a man who a lot of people love and a lot of people want to be with, and they think that he has control over our lives. Each one of the people who is a sannyasin with Bhagwan is an individual who's there of his own free will. They love being there. It's not that easy to be there.
What do you mean it's not easy?
Not everyone who wants to be there can be there. It takes financial commitment. It takes money to live there if you're not a commune member.
How did you get that money?
I was a commune member before, when the commune started, so it wasn't a question for me. Yeah. But when people come to visit the ranch, they have to pay for their accommodations. They have to pay for their meals and so on.
I don't think I've ever talked to somebody who's been involved with cults, whether they come under the umbrella that we traditionally define as cults or not, who did not recognize at the time they were there that they were brainwashed, or that there was some element of mind control, or that somehow they were motivated, influenced, dictated to by forces beyond them. Everybody within, at the time they're within the cult or within the group, says, no influence on me, free will, you know, it's all love and sharing here. Everything is terrific. I can walk out when I want to. That's what they all say.
I don't know what everybody else says. All I can say is what my experience is. My experience is I'm there because I want to be there. As far as the brainwashing is concerned, I feel like I was much more brainwashed before I was a member of this organization.
By society at large?
Yeah. What this whole organization is teaching me to do is not to listen to what other people tell me and to believe it and to be what they think I should be, but to look inside myself and be as true to myself as I can be.
What's going to happen now to you?
What's going to happen now? I don't know.
You don't know. Does it worry you?
No.
Will you be happy with the Bhagwan in India and perhaps you in California?
I'll be happy wherever I am, whatever I'm doing. I'm not worried about it. I don't know what's going to happen next. I'm probably going to move to California.
And live outside of a commune and live with a normal, sort of typical American life in which you will get up in the morning and go to work as a psychologist or whatever, or go back to college or something like that?
Something like that. I don't know what yet.
Yeah. And how will you be different from Patricia, from me, from people working behind the cameras?
I'll be different because I'll be different from the way I used to be and the way I think that most people are, is because I'll be meditative. And something in the last 5 years since I've been a member of this organization in me has changed. I'm much more comfortable with myself. I'm much more silent inside.
What about the marriage?
My marriage?
Yes.
My husband and I are not living together at the moment, but we're still married and we probably will be together again.
Is marriage monogamous within the Rajneesh's followers?
It's not a doctrine at all within the religion. It's totally up to the individual what they want to do. We're not told how to have a marriage or what that means as far as monogamy.
You must be, despite all of this, one, wish her enormous happiness.
Of course
and success and all of that, and the family means much to both of you. Can you in the end accept that she's happy and doing what she wants to do?
I'm not gonna, yeah, she's 33 years old, and the thing that's important to me after everything that's happened to us, both parents died relatively young.
Yes. Your mother died soon after the father.
Right, a couple of years after. The thing that's important to me and always has been important to me is that whatever we're doing, that we still have some semblance of family, because it's more important. It's important to us to stick together and to have some kind of support. She has a lot of support with her friends in Rajneeshpuram, but I hope that we can still have some kind of support within the family too. And if she is doing what she wants to do, that's great.
Much success to you and happiness. Thank you for joining us. To you too, Pat.
Thank you.
We'll continue. Stay with us.
At the start of the Spanish-American War, citizen soldiers were practically the only army we had. And there was one unusual regiment that would go down in history. It was made up of cowboys straight from the plains and blue bloods right out of the social register. They called themselves the Rough Riders. They all left their jobs and families to risk their lives for freedom. The volunteer who led the regiment was Teddy Roosevelt.
Men are ready, sir. Troop, charge!
The readiness of the National Guard and Reserve is more vital than ever to our country's defense today. And if you're an employer, your readiness to give them time off for training is crucial. If Roosevelt had worked for you, would you have given him time off to serve his country? Support the men and women of the National Guard and Reserve. Protect their future while they protect yours.
Thanks. Jack, I didn't know you had a hearing problem.
Problem was, I didn't know myself. You remember when I was having trouble understanding things? Actually, I was missing parts of conversations. I just couldn't hear everything. Well, now with a hearing aid.
Customers love him. Jack is one of nearly 20 million Americans with a hearing problem. Most can be helped, medically, surgically, through rehabilitation, or with hearing aids. For more information, call toll-free Hearing Helpline, 800-4 Box 1840, Washington, D.C., 20013. That's Hearing, Box 1840, Washington, D.C., 20013.
You should hear what you're missing.
On Wall Street Thursday, the fourth heaviest trading day in history. The Dow Jones Industrial Average broke through the 1,500 level for the first time ever, but then dropped back to close just under 1,483. The volume, over 181 million shares. From CBS News in Washington, this is the CBS News Nightwatch. Now here again is correspondent Charlie Rose.
Welcome back. This half-hour look at local television news broadcasters. As they report, they smile and they joke, and sometimes it seems like they'll do almost anything to get you to watch their newscast. But there seems to be, today, a new respect in the news industry for local news. We'll find out why. Then, photographer Richard Avedon. He shoots beautiful women for a living. That's how he earned his reputation as one of America's best photographers. About 5 years ago, he decided to look at another side of life. The result, an exhibition called In the American West. We'll hear about it and see some of the pictures. Stay with us. Nightwatch continues.
These are the amazing Lee press-on nails. They press on in seconds. No glue, no mess. Simply press on Lee Superstick tabs. Then press on Lee press-on nails. That's all. Easy on, easy off. Use them again and again. They just won't break or split. Polish, and they're nearly impossible to chip. So press on. Lee press-on nails. In natural and glamour lengths and a variety of sizes for a quick, easy fit. Press on. Now the nail people from Lee present high-fashion nail tips. The truly beautiful nail tips that are curved and styled like salon nails, yet are easy to do at home. Just select the size, glue in place, let dry, and smooth. With Lee high-fashion nail tips, hands that look like this can look like this. Experience what they can do for you. Lee high-fashion nail tips.
I just bought this quality flatbed on sale. I made a smart buy.
I just bought this Craftmatic 2 adjustable bed.
On Wall Street Thursday, the fourth heaviest trading day in history. The Dow Jones Industrial Average broke through the 1,500 level for the first time ever, but then dropped back to close just under 1,483. The volume, over 181 million shares. From CBS News in Washington, this is the CBS News Nightwatch. Now here again is correspondent Charlie Rose.
Welcome back. This half-hour look at local television news broadcasters. As they report, they smile and they joke, and sometimes it seems like they'll do almost anything to get you to watch their newscast. But there seems to be, today, a new respect in the news industry for local news. We'll find out why. Then, photographer Richard Avedon. He shoots beautiful women for a living. That's how he earned his reputation as one of America's best photographers. About 5 years ago, he decided to look at another side of life. The result, an exhibition called In the American West. We'll hear about it and see some of the pictures. Stay with us. Nightwatch continues.
These are the amazing Lee press-on nails. They press on in seconds. No glue, no mess. Simply press on Lee Superstick tabs. Then press on Lee press-on nails. That's all. Easy on, easy off. Use them again and again. They just won't break or split. Polish, and they're nearly impossible to chip. So press on. Lee press-on nails. In natural and glamour lengths and a variety of sizes for a quick, easy fit. Press on. Now the nail people from Lee present high-fashion nail tips. The truly beautiful nail tips that are curved and styled like salon nails, yet are easy to do at home. Just select the size, glue in place, let dry, and smooth. With Lee high-fashion nail tips, hands that look like this can look like this. Experience what they can do for you. Lee high-fashion nail tips.
I just bought this quality flatbed on sale. I made a smart buy.
I just bought this Craftmatic 2 adjustable bed, and I paid over $100 less for my bed than that guy.
I have problems when I read. I have to stack up pillows.
I simply press this button, and instantly my bed positions itself for perfect reading.
I have problems when I snack. I spill stuff. Why did I buy a flat bed?
My Craftmatic 2 positions itself for perfect eating.
I paid top price, and I still don't get a good night's sleep.
I'm no dummy. I bought a Craftmatic 2 adjustable bed.
Be smart. Don't buy any bed until you get this free information by mail about the Craftmatic 2 adjustable bed that costs less than many flatbeds. Call toll-free now for free information.
Call toll-free 1-800-235-3500, 1-800-235-3500. Call 1-800-235-3500 toll-free, 1-800-235-3500.
In the news, the president's chief economic advisors are recommending that industries badly hurt by foreign imports be exempt from restrictions on mergers. The plan is part of a proposed overhaul of antitrust laws aimed at helping American industry to be more competitive with foreign firms. President Reagan and his wife flew to New York Thursday night for a black-tie 30th birthday party for the conservative magazine, The National Review. 750 guests were invited, but the dinner was closed to the press at the request of the magazine's founder, William F. Buckley. A federal jury has ordered CBS Inc. to pay a cigarette maker $5 million for libel in a 1981 commentary by veteran Chicago anchorman Walter Jacobson. The local TV commentary charged the makers of Viceroys with luring youngsters into smoking. CBS, which owns the station involved, will appeal the decision.
When critics look at television news, local stations usually have had the worst marks.
Good evening. It is certainly a tragic sign of the season. A blocked chimney, a house filled with carbon monoxide, a silent and sudden death for a couple in Queens.
Good evening.
They've been accused of sensationalizing stories to attract viewers. They've made enemies of many serious journalists with their so-called happy talk formats. As we wind up our series this week, The Broadcasters, this morning we look at local television news. Joining us from Chicago, Jay Newman, news director of CBS-owned and operated station WBBM, and Dan Ruth, television critic of the Chicago Sun-Times. Start with you, Dan. How grade local news overall today, 1985, December?
Well, I think local news has always had this show business mentality. You know, the world comes to an end, film at 11 kind of thing. Local television news stations are under tremendous pressure to produce ratings, which in turn turn into revenue, and I think that creates a far more sometimes chaotic and in some cases a rather unjournalistic approach to local news. That's a very blanket statement. In general, in general with respect to Chicago, as bad as sometimes things may get here, Chicago generally has a reputation of being one of the best local news markets anywhere in the country, by comparison, that is, to Los Angeles or New York or any other major city. But you still have this. The worst problem with local news, Charlie, is that it is the mortal sin that sweeps months visit upon newsrooms in every market, and it's just as bad here as it is anyplace else.
Sweep months are February, May, and November, as I remember from local television, and that's the time in which buyers want higher ratings because they want to buy.
Yeah.
Jay, look at local news today. Defend the indictment or that sensationalizes during ratings week, that there's too much false camaraderie, that it's not doing the tough, serious, hard journalism that it ought to be doing?
Well, I don't have to defend anything because I think while in any medium, whether it's newspaper, television, magazine, there are some people that do it very well and some people who do not. I think in general the state of local television news is very strong. I think there are more and more examples of community service where stations are going out and engaging in projects which help people. And I think that if you talk to community groups in almost any city in this country, you'll find many, many positive examples of where television stations have been helpful. I think the state of investigative journalism, Charlie, on local television news has never been better. Chicago is a very good example of that, with several top investigative reporters, including Pam Zeckman here at WBBM, and a number of other markets. I think that there is a trend in local television news towards community service, towards more digging and more depth. And I think that, in all due respect to my friend Dan Ruth here, that some of this criticism and dwelling on the negative is getting a little tiring. And I invite Dan and some of the other people who write about television to, sure, criticize us, Dan, when there is something to criticize, and you do, and I think that's good. It keeps us on our toes. But I also would like to see people who write about television step back and look for some of the positive, because there's an awful lot of positive out there.
Oh, you know, no one is making a blanket indictment here, but what we are talking about are the areas where television local news could certainly do an awful lot better than it does. It is true that Pam Zeckman does a terrific job for WBBM, and there are others. But the real, you know, let's take a look at the sweep months, for example. Recently in New York, there was a station that promoted its major sweep story for the month, Is God Really Mad at Us, or something to that effect. Locally here in Chicago, the ABC affiliate spent a lot of time hyping one of their local talk show hostesses' debut in a Steven Spielberg film as major news, and their television critic pretty much served as a mouthpiece for the ABC programming that month. Over at Channel 5, the NBC affiliate, there was a whole series done, positioned as hard news for this station, a whole series done on Miami Vice. Now, come on, that is hardly good, strong, hard, honest journalism. You know, and that when it serves the network's purpose or the station's purpose to become a flack for its programming or a flack for one of its celebrities, it doesn't waste any time doing that.
Yeah, and I don't know that I would disagree with you. I prefer special reports and special series that deal with substantive issues, that deal with information that is helpful to people. I'm not going to sit here and defend the industry. I think that there are different philosophies and different ways of going about it, just like some newspapers in this town and other towns choose to devote the entire front page of their paper to a story that may be somewhat sensationalistic. But I think it is wrong to go out and say that is the norm for the industry, because it's not. I think that it was more common 7 or 8 years ago, not at all stations, but at more stations than it is now. I think as we've grown as an industry, that we've seen that people are more serious, they want more substantive content, they want more news that is relevant and interesting to their life, and I think that many more television stations are moving in that direction.
But if that's true, Jay, why have you cut back on political reporting?
We haven't cut back on political reporting, Dan, as you know. What we are doing, what many television stations in this country are doing, are covering a wider range of different types of stories and making those stories more relevant. There's a big world out there. One of the papers in Chicago recently did a series about the growth in population, economic base, cultural base in the suburbs. And we, as well as your paper and other papers, have responded to that. Mm-hmm. So we're covering more. We're covering politics, we're covering crime, we're covering news about people who are making a difference in their communities, and we will cover more.
All right, when we come back, let's talk about some of the other aspects in terms of how the business is changing and the notion of whether the weatherman ought to be a meteorologist or he ought to be a clown to bring in the audience. We'll do that as we continue a look at local news as part of our series, The Broadcasters. Stay with us.
From glamour to high fashion, Richard Avedon shoots for the best. But still ahead, his focus changes for a special exhibit.
the book that's bringing them in off the range. Wanted, the free consumer information catalog from Pueblo, Colorado, 81009.
Is the mail here yet?
Are the free catalogs in from Pueblo?
Hold your horses, boys. There's just one left. But the new one will be here in the next mail. Any minute.
Yes, it's the free catalog from the Consumer Information Center of the U.S. government.
With more than 200 fact-filled federal publications, and many are free.
Well, looky here. It lists booklets on jobs, food and money, health, safety, exercise, even cars.
Cars?
And you don't have to get out of town to get them. It comes right to you. Mail from Pueblo!
Yahoo! Get your free catalog. Write to this here address. Write catalog, Pueblo, Colorado, 81009.
That's Pueblo, Colorado, 81009.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ray Charles.
There are 35 million people with disabilities in America today. Do you know what we want out of life? Well, the same things you do. To participate, to use our abilities to the fullest. That means being able to get in and out of places you want to go if you use a wheelchair, having signs in Braille, getting extra learning help to do the job you want to do. It means being included. And because this is the decade of disabled persons, the National Organization on Disability urges us all to lend a hand right in our own communities. All you have to do is pick up your phone and dial this number.
1-800-248-ABLE.
Let's put our abilities to work so that all America and Americans gain. Do it now. I thank you.
Kidney disease is one of our greatest health problems. To learn more about kidney disease, its treatment, and how you can help, contact your American Kidney Fund. It's toll-free.
We're talking about local news. Let me go back to Chicago and raise the question of weather people, because that same New York station that you talked about in terms of Is God Mad at Us? Yeah. Says that what's different about his news is its authenticity. If authenticity is different, how do you have someone giving the weather who's not a weatherman, for example, is one of the indictments made?
Well, you know, Willard Scott isn't a weatherman either, but his argument has always been that he's been doing weather for something like 25 or 30 years, and he's been around it long enough, and he certainly has learned something. And besides, he has a lot of weathermen working back in the office providing him the material he needs. So I'm not so sure that in this one narrow area of weather reporting that it's necessarily important that the front man giving out the forecast be a bona fide meteorologist. It is important that he get his information that he relates back to the public through trained meteorologists and so forth. Channel 2 here in Chicago does have two very fine meteorologists. I'll get that plug in for Jay before he does.
Well, there's one thing we agree on.
But
we found one, Charlie.
But you know, Charlie, there's I think, a much deeper issue here, and that is one of the real scandals of Watergate was not so much the misdeeds uncovered in the White House, but it was the glamorization of journalism, which in turn created a tremendous profusion of people going off to communication schools and journalism schools to become glamorous reporters. And those people, in turn, filtered back into journalism and filtered back into the media. And now, my argument is that you have an industry that's full on both sides, print and broadcast. It is full of a lot of people who can't write their names, much less a very good story, which in turn leads to a degeneration of the of journalism.
But that sounds like an indictment of journalism schools to me.
Sure it does, absolutely.
If I could jump in here, Charlie, I think that's an overstatement. I do think at newspapers, television stations, there are people who are not very good. There are also a number of people who are very good, and that's true of any business that you look at. I do think you have correctly identified a problem area, and that is that there are many people out there who are seeking to get into the business of television or the business of print, whatever types of journalism you want to call it, who are looking for the glamour side of it. There are also a lot of people who are not looking for glamour. They really believe that they can make a difference, that they can serve the public. I think it is up to people who do the hiring on a newspaper, a magazine, or in a television station to sort those people out. And my gosh, we've been looking for a good, hard street reporter here for a number of months and have looked and talked to literally dozens of people.
And what's the problem, Jay? Why can't you find him or her? Why can't you find
him? Him or her, thank you. We can't find him or her yet because we want to take our time and we want to make sure that we have somebody that is not only a good presenter and a good communicator on TV, which is very important, but somebody who also is in it because they want to make a difference.
It's a fault of the craft where it's not turning out the kinds of people who can do these kinds of jobs in major markets like Chicago.
I don't think it's the fault of the craft. I think it is a realization that by the time you hire a reporter in a Chicago or even in a smaller market, that you should make a careful search and get the best possible person. Let me finish, okay. Charlie. I use that as an illustration, not that there are people out there. I have talked to plenty of qualified people, but I use that as an illustration of what I think the process that we as editors, whether it's in broadcasting or whether it's in print, must go through to make sure that we're getting the best possible people. And there's a lot of measurements of that. Obviously, with television, you have to have somebody who is not only qualified journalistically, but also somebody who can present those stories in an interesting manner on television. That makes it more difficult.
Interesting. Let me just jump in here for a second and have both of you speak to this issue. It is that the local news, as part of a local television station, contributes a significant portion of the revenues of that station. It does so because most of the ads are local ads, and therefore that local salesmen sell. Therefore, ratings differences means you can charge more money. Therefore, money is on the line, and therefore you got to pay anchor people a lot of money because you're looking for that edge that will bring money into the station. Therefore, it prostitutes journalism in pursuit of the dollar. Speak to it both.
Yeah, I think again, that part of that is a false premise. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that local news on any station, even a number 3 rated station, does not make a lot of money. You can make money on television news without being number 1. I think that anchor people are highly paid in some cases because they're in demand. And like anything else, when somebody is in demand and there is competitive pressure to hire that person across the street or in San Diego or in San Francisco, they can command a higher salary. That is no different than what goes on when a company tries to hire a new president or a new vice president. The good people.
Okay, but speak to the final. I disagree with you there. I think one of the problems is that if you pay an anchorman like Bill Curtis, which is what WBBM is doing, over $1 million a year to report the news, it kind of takes Curtis out of the mainstream in terms of relating to the audience he's supposed to be reporting to. But BBM laid out this money for the very competitive reasons you were both talking about, and so far it's backfired on them. So far, BBM's ratings in both the afternoon and late night have declined or stabilized somewhat, while their competitors have made some inroads against them. Yeah, so here's a perfect case where all these bucks were spent to bring back this big gun, and the gun is misfired. Is any anchorman worth $1 million a year for the job that he does? Forget the ratings, forget the revenue it brings in. Just sit there night after night and read the news. Is anybody worth $1 million a year to do that?
I'm not going to sit here and comment on
no, forget BBM. Just talk about the industry. Just talk about the industry.
Somebody's salaries. I think the industry, all right, has to begin to sort out both what people make and what they do. I think if somebody offers a major contribution, both on and off the air, then they ought to be compensated for that. How much? We could go back and forth on that. The Chicago Sun-Times pays certain people more money than they pay other people.
Of course.
Because of the value there. I think Charlie has identified a problem that exists not only in television, but it exists in sports and it exists in a number of areas, which is how much do you pay some people versus other people. I think that there's no across-the-board answer to that, and I think it depends basically on what the situation is.
That's what I love about this business, Charlie, is that it can really be so absurd sometimes. Bill Curtis is hired at over $1 million a year to come back here, and he comes back with his self-imposed mandate to redefine local television journalism. And the first story he does when he comes back to Chicago is a story about Lourdes or Fatima or someplace. You know, maybe he thought the Cubs were going to play them next year or something. But that is hardly redefining local journalism. Another story he did was to go up to Toronto and do a story about movie making.
Before I rise to the defense of Bill or anyone else in this case, give him time. Dan, Ruth, Jay Newman, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie.
Part of our series of broadcasters. Nightwatch continues. Stay with us.
Now the nail people from Lee present High Fashion Nail Tips, the truly beautiful nail tips that are curved and styled like salon nails, yet are easy to do at home. Just select the size, glue in place, let dry, and smooth. With Lee High Fashion Nail Tips, hands that look like this can look like this. Experience what they can do for you. Lee High Fashion Nail Tips. These are the amazing Lee press-on nails. They press on in seconds. No glue, no mess. Simply press on Lee Super Stick tabs. Then press on Lee press-on nails. That's all. Easy on, easy off. Use them again and again. They just won't break or split. Polish, and they're nearly impossible to chip. So press on. Lee press-on nails. In natural and glamour lengths and a variety of sizes for a quick, easy fit. Press on.
If you're an investor, here's an important telephone number from Charles Schwab and an important message.
I work long hours at my job, but I still don't need somebody else telling me what stocks to buy and sell. I make my own decisions, and often I make them after the markets have closed. That's one reason I trade with Charles Schwab, the #1 discount broker. With Schwab, I can place an order to buy or sell anytime, day or night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I can sleep easy. I know my order will be entered the minute the market opens. And I can save up to 76% on commissions compared to what full commission brokers charge. 24-hour service, big savings. That's why I invest through Charles Schwab.
I'm Charles Schwab. You'll like our low commissions, our convenience, and our quality service. That's a promise.
For a free booklet telling what Schwab Discount Brokerage can do for you, call 800-554-7000 toll-free. That's 800-554-7000. Charles Schwab, a Bank America company, member SIPC.
Next week here on Nightwatch, Congressman Dan Rostenkowski, the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, talks about his push for tax reform this year. An American who made good playing baseball in Japan, Randy Bass, took his team all the way to the Japanese championship. And an Australian making it good in America as a singer. Peter Allen is ranked as one of the top entertainers in show business.
Easily, you know that's not me. And I turn into a tiger every time I get this out of what
Beyond War is a group that's trying to promote what it calls a new way of thinking. It believes in the peaceful resolution of conflicts, from marital problems to nuclear standoffs. The group was started by several couples in California's affluent Silicon Valley. Over the last 2 years, it has slowly been picking up new supporters across the country. Joining us now is the president of the Beyond War Foundation, Richard Rathbun. Definitions, I guess, at first. Mr. Rathbun, what do we mean by Beyond War?
Well, Beyond War would be a world in which we did not any longer use war as a means of resolving conflict.
How do you do it? How do you avoid the kind of confrontation that leads to war? How do you avoid the kind of misunderstanding that causes one nation to seek to possess or to conquer another nation?
Well, that's certainly the question. And we have developed the technology, certainly, to make our planet very small. And we've also developed the technology to cause the extinction of the human species. And so that does not mean that there won't be conflict in the future. I can't imagine a world without conflict. But we do have to see conflict in a new light. Perhaps we have to see conflict as an opportunity rather than as a threat.
You have a fascinating graphic way of illustrating the enormous, precarious position we are with respect to the increasing proliferation of nuclear war, nuclear weapons. Tell us about the BBs, and then we're going to show a video that illustrates it, but tell us about the idea.
Certainly. Well, I think one of the problems for people in dealing with the whole question of war and nuclear weapons is the fact that they are so abstract. The fact that we have 50,000 nuclear weapons greater than the kind of nuclear weapon that caused the destruction in Hiroshima and Nagasaki is a very abstract for people to get their minds around. It's a very abstract idea. And so we use the BBs very often to make that abstract idea very concrete. And so you take, I think, 6,000 BBs and you pour them into a receptacle where they each make a noise. And it's a graphic way of showing the destructive power that we have created. We usually drop one BB.
Okay, hold on. Hold on right there. Let's take a look.
Okay.
At a videotape that
the first sound you're going to hear represents all the destructive force of World War II, all the bombs that were dropped.
And I'm going to drop it in the can so you can have an experience of what it sounds like.
The next sound you're going to hear represents the destructive force of all of the weapons that exist in the arsenals of the United States and the Soviet Union, our nuclear weapons.
What do you say to those Americans that would come to you and say, listen, including the president, we're willing to seek peace. We're trying to find ways to generate arms control. Not only that, we're trying to develop a defensive system that will protect us from the threat of offensive nuclear weapons. We're doing our best. Why don't you talk to the Soviets about reducing nuclear war? What do you say to that?
Well, I think you have to embark on a process based on two facts. The first fact is that war as a tool of resolving conflict is absolutely obsolete. If you look at our history recently, we don't even call the things we fight wars anymore. Certainly among superpowers, war is absolutely obsolete. And as the power to destroy spreads among nations, all war is going to become obsolete. So you have to base your actions on that one fact. Secondly, the fact is that we live on one planet, one system. It's an interdependent system. We depend on each other for survival. No one part of humanity is going to make it without the rest of humanity making it. In fact, we all make it together or we all become extinct together. So you have to base your actions first upon those two facts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
We'll continue. Stay with us.
In the news, the House Judiciary Committee is calling for a special prosecutor to investigate the conduct of administration officials in 1983 who withheld EPA Superfund files from Congress. Former EPA Chief Ann Burford was cited for contempt of Congress at the time, but the panel's report suggests Burford was not responsible for resisting congressional requests. The House will resume debate today on money for the Superfund Toxic Waste Cleanup Program. Late Thursday, it approved a public disclosure requirement for factories making and using toxic chemicals. A new record auction price has been set for an American painting. Thursday, the National Gallery of Art bought Rembrandt Peale's portrait of Rubens Peale with a geranium for $4 million. The sale took less than 90 seconds.
There's nothing to be nervous about. You're going to be great. Now listen close. You're in Paris, in the Tuileries. You've got balloons. There's a sudden shower, and you're very, very happy.
Why am I so happy?
Because I say you are.
In the 50s, Fred Astaire played photographer Richard Avedon in the movie Funny Face. Then Avedon's career was all glamour. His work ranked him as one of the 10 best photographers in the world. The most beautiful women in the world were his subjects. He created a whole new style of fashion photography. But another side of Avedon is on display in an exhibit now touring the country in the American West as a result of 5 years of work. These are ordinary people. The glamour is gone, but the beauty still seems to remain. Joining us now, photographer Richard Avedon. This is an impressive book. Let's see the cover of this. In the American West, it is an impressive body of work.
Thanks, Joe.
And a lot of people would find it a side of Richard Avedon they don't know. How did it get started, and what's the process that results in this?
Well, I've been doing portraits of Americans for getting close to 40 years. I started
Not just fashion, people like William Buckley and lots of others.
I think I've published 4 books of portraits and 1 of fashion. It's just that I'm more famous as a fashion photographer. The portraits are all of Americans. It started out with actors and then writers and artists and the leaders of society, and there was an issue of Rolling Stone before the 1976 election of only the power elite of the country, the people who ran the country, the union heads, the politicians, the senators, the heads of the media and the press, bankers. And I knew that this portrait of America in my lifetime would never be completed unless I'd done the working class. But I also thought that there was no way that I could photograph what I didn't understand. And I knew about power, and I knew about beauty. I knew about artists, about being an artist. My mother is an artist. My father's a businessman, was. And I thought this project of mine would fail. And then I had, do you know what pericarditis is? It's an inflammation of the lining of the heart.
Yeah, the heart, sure. The pericardium wall. Yeah.
Wall, and it can be very dangerous. It can be fatal if it recurs. And I was not someone who was going to lie down and rest properly, so it did recur. And then I was warned that I had to have a month, at least 6 weeks to a month, of doing absolutely nothing. And I went out to Montana.
Yeah, away from phones, away from Manhattan,
and away from
all
my
the
family, away from everybody. I took some books,
Yeah.
and each day I walked a little further in these 35,000 acres, nothing but 900 head of cattle and myself, and a man named Wilbur Powell. And Wilbur, older than, he's dead now, but he was in his 60s, his family had homesteaded in the Madison Valley, and he had grown up there. He was the rancher in charge of the cattle and me. I became so fond of him and got to know him, got to know his wife, and little by little, as I got stronger, we'd go into town or into Cameroon, where Cameroon has a gas tank and a bar, and I'd meet the farmer, the cowboys, and the slaughterhouse people,
Yeah.
and the people working in the talc
And Wilbur
mine.
would introduce you as his friend from New York.
Exactly, his friend from New York, and they say, and they were so warm and nice. I was in New York once, I was so frightened about, traffic was coming. And soon, I found that not only did we share everything that was important to us, that they were as easy to relate to, and the things that mattered in my life mattered in their lives.
How do you feel?
The quality
your friends,
of life,
the
what do you
quality
do
of
with your
life,
children,
How
are you going to face, how do you keep a relationship going? Everything was the same.
And it caused you to say, I got to photograph these people?
I started with Wilbur.
Right.
And the picture is in the book. And if you look carefully at the book, you'll see it's a year before the real project began. I photographed Wilbur and then some of the people in this town of Ennis, Montana, and that triggered this project. I knew after Wilbur that I could indeed photograph hardworking men and women with uncelebrated, unrewarded lives.
But beauty.
And enormous inner ability to survive. It's about survival, because it's hard out there. And as
let me take a look at a picture. This is the first one we have, a boy with a rattlesnake, and we'll see this picture here. Tell me just one story. Where you saw him, why did you select him, what does his say?
One of the, when I grew up in the 30s and late 20s, the definition of what it was to be a man, and I don't think it's changed so much, in America was to be a cowboy. It was to be John Wayne. And now it's a Marlboro man.
Yeah.
It was to come into town shooting and strut. It was simple, and it was the American cowboy was the definition of masculinity. I wanted to go back out and rediscover that and see if indeed it was there. And at the Rattlesnake Roundup, I found this young man named Boyd Fortin. I think he's 13 years old when the picture was taken. Yeah. And to me, he's half child, half angel, half man. He has the cold eyes of a guy who's getting stronger, but he has the mouth of a girl almost. He's just coming into his adolescence. The snake is castrated, but it's held like a beautiful lyre. It's kind of a mythic image, but it has built into it all of the turbulence of adolescence beginning.
We're going to see a lot more photographs.
Yeah.
You found in the end that John Wayne's West did not exist, that the novels of Louis L'Amour did not reflect the West that you saw.
No, there's a book called The Last Cowboy by Jane Kramer. It was a series of pieces in the New Yorker that turned into a book that more accurately reflect the West. This project began 6 years ago for me, and I've watched what's happened to ranching. What's happened, you know what's happened to agriculture. You know what's happened to, I mean, I was in Butte, Montana, when the Berkeley pit closed. That's Anaconda. That's one of the most beautiful cities in America, and it's also a one industry copper mining city. When that folded, there was nothing but unemployment there. There are a lot of people out west who aren't equipped for the next stage in our industrial
and don't
growth.
know what's going to happen to him, and in a sense what's going to happen to him, and in essence what it's about, as you say, survival and the human spirit enduring. We'll look at some more photographs. Richard Avedon, one of our best. Back in a moment. Stay with us.
Friday, a man seeks his present by a wondrous journey to his past, and the mysterious light shows a traveler the way to the Twilight Zone.
Then on Dallas, JR will stop at nothing to keep his son.
What the judge wants, he gets, right?
But his calculated scheme might backfire.
Where's my boy?
And on Falcon Crest,
I'm going to be at the altar.
while one romance is smothered, another's forbidden passions are unleashed.
It's you I want to be with.
Friday.
Sunday, it's a party for an American leading man. Join host Frank Sinatra with Dean Martin, Charlton Heston, Burt Reynolds, Steve Lawrence, and Edie Gourmet. It's a star-studded evening of incredible entertainment, a warm celebration for one of Hollywood's own, the All-Star Party for Dutch Reagan.
I thank you all very much.
And it's all new. Over 30 of your favorite stars dare to become circus performers. Join celebrity ringmasters and special guest star Burt Lancaster for the Circus of the Stars. The girl who turned the world on with her smile is back.
You're going to be doing the helpline.
Only doing this until something better comes along, like a job in a limestone quarry.
And locking horns with her new managing editor.
You didn't think I could do that job for 1 minute. You were just trying to work a little action.
Yeah, that's fine.
Mary, Ben.
Lay it on me, boss. I can handle anything.
Meet Assistant D.A. Harrigan.
What was the weapon?
A can of tuna fish.
Two great comedies.
Loaded?
Mary and Foley Square, premiering December 11th. Monday, December 9th, journey to a wondrous land. And guess who you'll meet there? Red Buttons, Shelley Winters, Donald O'Connor, Sherman Hemsley, Sammy Davis Jr., Martha Ray, Imogene Coca, Telly Savalas, Anthony Newley, Artie Johnson, Roddy McDowell, Jane Meadows Allen,
Off with her head.
Sid Caesar, Ringo, and Carol Channing join one of the greatest casts ever assembled in Irwin Allen's all-new musical extravaganza, Alice in Wonderland.
I want to be so rich. I mean, money really makes me happy. Actually, I think $1 million would just about do it. You know, there are days when I feel just terrific, and I walk into a room thinking, hey, world, this is moi. And I look around.
Calvin Klein jeans.
And there's 16 mois more gorgeous than I am, and we're all out of work. Now, if I had that...
You made that commercial.
Yeah.
Harry Belafonte's daughter, Sherry Belafonte. You, at the same time you were doing it in the American West, were also pursuing those kinds of professional responsibilities. Back and forth?
Yes, with great difficulty sometimes, because my commercial work, my fashion work, is now my commercial work. Yeah. And it's the way I support myself in my studio, and it's a very demanding, large studio. When I'm out west photographing, I take maybe 100 sheets of 8x10 film, federal them back to New York, get on the telephone, are they developed? Are there any light flares? What does that picture look like? Get it back to me. Well, that takes a staff. Takes an enormous overhead. So I'm very grateful to be able to do advertising. Also, it taps other parts of me.
I want to stay with that subject because this is what fascinates about me. Let's take a look at a couple of fashion photography photographs here. Is, in the end, we'll see you doing fashion photography. And I should mention, for history's sake, you were the first person, I think, to sort of have models in motion, energy, in a sense, doing something rather than just sitting there. Here, you're having people just stand up. Fashion photography, this kind of photography, in the end, is it the same? Are you trying to look for a moment?
Well, it's not the same. when I was a younger man and there was more freedom in editorial fashion photography, I could express everything I knew about women and their relationship to clothes and their relationship to performance and the costume quality of clothes, as well as the surface beauty of it. Then the fashion world became more commercial, or I veered away in my interest, because you change as you age.
Sure.
And I was less in the things that I began to want to say about women's relationship to clothes and fashion was no longer acceptable to the fashion magazine. So now I consider it my commercial work. It's using a different part of yourself. I'm sure you're exactly the same, Charlie. I mean, you can interview me, you can interview an economist, a scientist, and have a wonderful time interviewing a new movie star, girl.
That's true.
And you adjust even your vocabulary. If
Some
you're
are more
going
satisfying than others.
Yes. But if you're lucky, you choose only the satisfying ones. And I think it's simply tapping different parts of your sensibility and your intelligence. And then a life starts anywhere.
Do you, though, having done this, having really been there with the hard-edged reality, power in New York and glamour in New York is real. The perception is real, and it makes a lot of money, controls a lot of the way we think of ourselves, and it has to do with self-esteem and how women picture themselves and all of that. But did this change your life anyway? Did you say, I got to do more of this because this somehow gives me more psychic income?
No, it didn't change my life. I think this may be the deepest work I've ever done in terms of character. And you know, what do they say? Indians are afraid of, in India, of having their souls stolen by the camera.
Yes.
I feel that I've given a little bit of my soul every day, and by giving it away in these photographs, kind of enrich it. I don't know, I could work with the middle class next, or with men. Do you know when you travel and you're in a hotel and everyone has a little badge with their name on it? Yes. Sometimes it breaks my heart to see the men in the elevators going up and down. I don't think there would be any difference in my approach to those salesmen on those conventions, photographing them, than the way in which I would approach an oil worker or a trucker or a waitress in a truck stop.
So the satisfaction for you, the reward for you, is the same?
I think so, yes. Yeah. It can be.
You said for a long time you'd wanted to do working class America and these faces. Is there still an obsession, a goal that you have not yet pursued? In other words, someone said, Richard Avedon has to make a decision soon. What's he going to do with the next 10 years of his life?
I don't know, Charlie.
What kind of direction is he going to go?
I feel it very strongly because I'm 62.
Right.
And you need a certain... There's a kind of sexual energy that goes into work. And it doesn't matter if that diminishes in your life, but it matters very much if it diminishes on the page of your book.
Yes.
And I'm not going to be...
Well, it does matter if it diminishes in your life, but...
no, because you adjust, and it's part of accepting growing older. And I know I'm in the last chapter, headed for the last chapter, and I feel no diminishing qualities at all
the quality of what goes on the page.
But what's on the page, exactly, or in my life, I don't feel any diminishing. But that worries me. But on the page, on the wall, in the museum, I don't want to be that nice old geezer who photographed trees at the end, and people say, look at his wonderful work when he was in his 40s and 50s and 60s and 30s, but look how it sort of...
You want the last photograph that you make to be the strongest you've ever made.
And how I'll come to that. I mean, it might well be that this book and this show at the Corcoran is it, but maybe not.
I certainly hope not. More with Richard Avedon when we continue. Stay with us.
Does the Roman Catholic Church need to change to keep the flock faithful? A night-match debate on Monday.
The worst stock market crash in history rocked the nation yesterday as stock prices collapsed.
On October 24th, 1929, the news that shocked the world didn't surprise everyone. 2 months earlier, Business Week readers were warned about stock prices that seemed unsteady. Business Week was then only a few weeks old. Today, the look of the magazine has changed, but not its significance. It was Business Week that told its readers about the takeover epidemic in the steel industry. And before the computer war broke out, Business Week readers not only knew it was coming, but who would come out on top. Week after week after week, Business Week tells you exactly what's going on in business and how it could affect your business. It's all right here, in the most concise, accessible form possible. But this publication does more than report the news. Business Week interprets, even anticipates, and that's important. Because in business, nobody likes to be taken by surprise.
Business Week magazine revealed this.
Businesses never look better in Business Week. And if you subscribe right now, you can take advantage of a very attractive offer. 32 issues for the low basic rate of only $24.95. That's just 78 cents an issue. A savings of more than 60% off the $2 cover price. And along with your paid subscription, Business Week will send you one more valuable business tool, the Business Week Solar Calculator, free. This desktop calculator is powered by any light source. There are no batteries required, nothing to plug in. And remember, it's free with your paid subscription to Business Week. Here's how to subscribe.
To get Business Week and the Solar Calculator, call 1-800-453-1214. 32 issues are only $24.95. This low basic rate saves you more than $39 off the cover price. The calculator is free with your paid subscription. That number again is 1-800-453-1214. Call now.
Richard Avedon is here. You don't like to be photographed yourself very much.
Well, I've had to get used to it. I didn't, and I was not photographed for a very long while. Not until...
But you have an interesting face. I mean, your hair, face is interesting.
It's getting interesting. I'm beginning to earn... What's inside of me is beginning to show on my face. I had an empty kind of face for many years, and I would look at pictures of myself and say, but that guy isn't the guy inside. Small bone, nervous, black hair. I looked like a sort of midget Alain Delon.
When you saw that in the mirror, that was not the way you pictured
the way
yourself?
I felt. It's not the way I felt. My face had nothing to do with my mind, the way I saw things, and the way I experienced and felt them. And I always knew, even as a young man, that if I could live to be an old man, I'd be okay. I'd be a much better older man than I would be.
You like your faces and the way you feel about yourself as you have evolved.
Yeah.
What makes a good photographer?
I think what makes a good photographer is not his technique, and it's not. It's the mind behind the camera. It's like what makes a good writer or a good interviewer. It has a lot to do with intelligence. When I look at and ability to transmit that intelligence through the camera and onto the paper. And by intelligence, I don't mean education. I mean intelligence of the heart and intelligence of the sensibility. When I look at young people's work, I want to, or anybody, any artist's work, I want to know what does this man stand for? What is he saying to me? I don't want to see a bowl with a rose in it, and I don't want to see a woman's bottom looking like a pepper, or a sand dune looking like a breast. I'm very against aestheticizing in life and in painting and in writing, and very for a direct confrontation of, I mean, I'm not a philosopher, but, you know, this is a rough, short trip we're all on.
Yeah.
And it's very much, as far as I'm concerned, how we help one another through, if we're capable of doing that, even within our families. So here, when in this body of work, I feel I fail if you see, I know this sounds contradictory, but it's not. If you see my hand in the pictures, for example, the boy with the snake or the man with the bees, you say, aha, that's what Avedon did. Yeah. To me, that's okay. I get it. It's strong. But when it looks as if no one was there, that little girl on the cover, she's just there.
Okay, we'll take a look. We'll look at this while you talk about it.
She's always there. As if she's always been there, and she will be there 100 years from now, and you almost could look at these faces and think they were there 100 years ago. And there's something that I can say through her face about how I feel about the human condition.
I know it's tough for an artist to describe that, but articulate what it is you say by this picture.
Well, in her case, first of all, you can't generalize. Sure. It's a different thing you say about each portrait.
But that's what I said about this
picture. In her case, it's the beginning of everything. She's as beautiful. If you move into her face very, very closely, she's as beautiful as a young Marilyn Monroe. She's sensuous and gentle and unknowing. Everything's beginning. And when you open the book, possibly you can see what might happen to such a teenager as she grows older.
Yeah, there is also a kind of curiosity there.
And a magnetism. She has a way of drawing you right to her.
A power.
She did. I found her with her grandmother in a fair up in northern Wyoming, and everyone was looking at her.
It was
just turned to look at her. She had that quality.
Do you regret anything you have done? Do you... The Calvin Klein business is very controversial, as you know. Do you regret that? I mean, come on.
No, I don't regret it. I don't want to discuss it because I'm here to talk about my book and the 5 years of working on this project. That's an entirely different issue.
But it is, I mean, I don't want you to be sensitive about it because it is, Richard Avedon is in everybody's judgment. You are what everybody wants to be. You do what you do better than anyone else. And everybody's work has a body of work, as you say. I interview different people. You know, you have no regrets about anything. All of the kind of work has demanded all of the same professionalism of Richard Avedon.
Absolutely. I do the best that I can on each project, and I think that what seems shocking in one period of the country's development is very often not shocking at all 6 months later.
Yeah. Why have you never made a film, a feature film?
I feel in a way, unless you're one of the great geniuses of film, it's like wine with water in it. It's so collaborative. See, when I work with assistants, but alone. Yeah. I don't have a writer writing these. I'm not dependent on a film editor to edit them. And I can put onto the page exactly what I feel. The people who control films are geniuses of a totally other quality than mine.
Control is a word that's important to you.
Very, yeah. Well, why? I think art is about control. Photography is about control. It's about taking a chaotic world and giving it some order.
Do you have an instinct, a greater feeling for beauty than, say, most people?
I think I don't know. I doubt that I have a greater feeling for beauty, but I think I have a more complicated feeling for beauty.
Because?
I think that I've been very aware of the damage that beauty does. It's a kind of isolation great beauties have.
Garbo, Book Shields, the rest of them.
Yes. It's as isolating as genius, except there's nothing that there's no return. It's over. It fades. It goes. And you're left with the memory of what you were. So I find great poignancy when I photograph beautiful women.
Because you know it is temporary.
More temporary than sort of any other gift that's so, what's the word for it, you know, a beautiful, beautiful young woman or man walk into a room and everyone stops and looks at them and they haven't earned it.
Yeah, it's something that God gave you, and that's
right. So it must give them such a sense of depersonalization. I mean, do they know who I mean, I wondered who I was as I grew up, and I can imagine, and it never occurred to me how difficult it was to be a great beauty and walk into a room.
Do you continue to wonder who you are?
No, I know who I am. I'm Richard Avedon.
One of the great photographers in America, in the American West, which is, first went on exhibition at the Amon Carter Museum in Fort Worth. Texas is at the Corcoran here in Washington. We'll be seen in another place. Pleasure to have you here.
Nice to see you,
very
George.
much.
Thank you.
Stay with me. Richard Avedon. Nightwatch continues. Stay with us.
Friday, a man seeks his present by a wondrous journey to his past, and the mysterious light shows a traveler the way to the Twilight Zone.
Then, on Dallas, JR will stop at nothing to keep his son.
What the judge wants, he gets, right?
But his calculated scheme might backfire.
Where's my boy?
And on Falcon Crest,
I'm going to be at the altar.
while one romance is smothered, another's forbidden passions are unleashed.
It's you I want to be with.
Friday.
Sunday, it's a party for an American leading man. Join Join host Frank Sinatra with Dean Martin, Charlton Heston, Burt Reynolds, Steve Lawrence, and Edie Gourmet. It's a star-studded evening of incredible entertainment. A warm celebration for one of Hollywood's own. The All-Star Party for Dutch Reagan.
I thank you all very much.
And it's all new. Over 30 of your favorite stars dare to become circus performers. Join celebrity ringmasters and special guest star Burt Lancaster for the Circus of the Stars. The girl who turned the world on with her smile is back.
You're going to be doing the helpline. Only doing this until something better comes along, like a job in a limestone quarry.
And locking horns with her new managing editor.
You didn't think I could do that job for 1 minute. You were just trying to work a little action.
Yeah, that's fine. Mary, then
Lay it on me, boss. I can handle anything.
meet Assistant D.A. Harrigan.
What was the weapon?
A can of tuna fish.
2 great comedies.
Loaded?
Mary and Foley Square, premiering December 11th. Monday, December 9th, journey to a wondrous land. And guess who you'll meet there? Red Buttons, Shelley Winters, Donald O'Connor, Sherman Hemsley, Sammy Davis Jr., Martha Ray, Imogene Coca, Telly Savalas, Anthony Newley, Artie Johnson, Roddy McDowell, Jane Meadows Allen,
Off with her head.
Sid Caesar, Ringo, and Carol Channing join one of the greatest casts ever assembled in Irwin Allen's all-new musical extravaganza, Alice in Wonderland.
Turning to sports this morning, in the NBA, the Milwaukee Bucks continued their recent domination over the New York Knicks Thursday night with a 105-95 victory at Madison Square Garden. It was the Bucks' 10th straight win over New York. Sidney Moncrief led the winners with 19 points. In other games, World B. Free netted 24 points to spark the Cavaliers to a 3-point win over the Supersonics, and Isaiah Thomas pumped in 28 to lead the Pistons over the Nets, who suffered their 3rd straight loss. The Spurs edged the Mavericks, ending Dallas's 6-game winning streak, and the Warriors defeated the Clippers. In the National Hockey League, the Boston Bruins snapped Montreal's 3-game winning streak with an 8-6 triumph over the Canadiens at Boston Garden. The lowly Maple Leafs won their 2nd game in a row, stunning the Flyers. Defenseman Scott Stevens scored on a 55-foot slap shot in overtime, giving the Capitals the win over the Blues. And the Kings skated to a tie with the Oilers. In other sports news, Oklahoma nose tackle Tony Casillas is the 1985 Lombardi Trophy winner as the nation's top college football lineman. It was on this date back in 1884 that Army engineers completed construction of the Washington Monument. The structure was dedicated the following February, but wasn't open to the public until October of 1888. And on December 6th in 1957, America's race into space suffered a setback as the first attempt to send a satellite into orbit ended in a launch pad blowout at Cape Canaveral.